Bing bongy bong, bing bongy bong. This is Joe, the bearded historian. He'll tell you an interesting story. Be careful of his soldiers, they can be brats. This is Angel, she's an entity. She'll cause chaos and plant her hands at you. This is Sue, she likes spirits, not the alcohol. She's the reason this channel exists. This is David, he likes fire trucks. He's here occasionally. Bing bongy bong, bing bongy bong, bing bongy bong. We preserve his story. Well, it is the middle of the week. And you know what that means. Joe will ramble about something. I don't know what. He hasn't told me yet. I haven't asked him. But before we listen to him ramble and look at whatever pictures I pull up, let's see who our shout out is for. Ready? Here we go. Shout out time. Here's a shout out just for you. You support me, so I support you. This shout out is for our friend. Let's see who it is today. Today we got the spinning wheel of death, so here we go. You spin me right round, baby, right round, like a record player, right round, baby. Uncle Bill! Okay, so it's story time with Uncle Bill. So welcome to my channel. Come hang with me and tell some experiences that I've been through and things I've done now to make things interesting and challenge throughout the day. And he's got, that was not what I meant to do. He's got a variety of things, and he's got his grandchildren and some cooking and randomness and conversations. Check him out. Pretty cool guy. So like, share, comment. Let him know we sent you by. Have a good day. Mr. Bud, what are you going to tell us?
Well, I was studying a little bit of ancient history, and the history book I was reading on was a guy named Frederick Barbarossa. And the thing that makes it kind of interesting is here's a fellow that was, depending on if you were talking to the Germans, the Italians, the English, he had 3 different names, and he was actually the Holy Roman Emperor from 1155 until his death 35 years later. He's elected King of Germany at Frankfurt in 1152, crowned in Aachen. He was crowned the King of Italy in 1155 in Pavia, and Emperor by Pope Adrian IV in 1155 in Rome. 2 years later, the term sanctum or holy was first appeared on a document in connection with this empire. He was later formally crowned King of Burgundy. That's a lot of crowns for one single person.
That is a lot of crowns.
Now,
responsibilities.
Yeah. Now, he was named Barbarossa by the northern Italy cities which he attempted to rule. Barbarossa means Redbeard in Italian. In German, he was known as Kaiser Rotbart, which means, in English, Emperor Redbeard. The prevalence of the Italian nickname, even in later German usage, reflects the centrality of the Italian campaigns to his career. Now, going through the different places that he had control, his first official title that he was saddled with would come from an inheritance for the Duke of Swabia that he had from 1147 to 1152 as Frederick III before an imperial election in 1152. He was the son of the Duke Frederick II of the Hohenstaufen dynasty and Judith, daughter of Henry IX, Duke of Bavaria, from the rival house of Welf. Frederick, therefore, descended from the 2 leading families in Germany, making him an acceptable choice for the empire's prince-electors. Frederick joined the Third Crusade and opted to travel overland to the Holy Land in 1190. Frederick drowned attempting to cross the Salif River leading to most of the army disbanding the crusade before reaching Acre. Now, historians consider him among the Holy Roman Empire's greatest medieval emperors. He combined qualities that made him appear almost superhuman to his contemporaries: his longevity, ambition, his extraordinary skills at organization, his battlefield acumen, and political perspicacity. He contributed to the Central European society and culture, including the re-establishment of the Corpus Juris Civilis, or Roman rule of law, which counterbalanced the papal power that dominated the German states since the conclusion of the investiture controversy. Due to his popularity and notoriety in the 19th and early 20th centuries, he was used as a political symbol by many movements and regimes. The Risgormento, the Wilhelmine government in Germany, especially during the time of Emperor Wilhelm I, and the Nazi movement, resulting in both golden and dark legends. Modern researchers, while exploring the legacy of Frederick, attempted to uncover the legends and reconstruct the true historical figure, and these efforts resulted in a new perspective on both the emperor as a person and the social developments associated with him. Now, he was born in December 1122 in Huguenau to Frederick II, Duke of Swabia, and Judith of Bavaria. He learned to ride, hunt, and use weapons, but he could neither read nor write, and was also unable to speak Latin. Later on, he took part in the Hoftage during the reign of his uncle, King Conrad III, in 1141 in Strasbourg, 1142 in Constance, 1143 in Ulm, 1144 in Würzburg, and 1145 in Worms. Now, in 1147, Frederick joined the Second Crusade. His uncle, King Conrad III, had taken the Crusader vow in public on the 28th of December, 1146. Frederick's father strongly objected to his son's crusade. According to Otto of Friesling, the Duke berated his brother, Conrad III, for permitting his son to go. The elder Frederick, who was dying, expected his son to look after his widow and young half-brother. Perhaps in preparation for his crusade, Frederick married Adeline of Womberg sometime before March of 1147. His father died on the 4th or 6th of April, and Frederick succeeded to the Duchy of Swabia. The German Crusader army departed from Regensburg 7 weeks later. Now, in August of 1147, while crossing the Byzantine Empire, an ill crusader stopped by a monastery outside of Adrianople to recuperate. There he was robbed and killed. Conrad ordered Frederick to avenge him. The Duke of Swabia razed the monastery, captured and executed the robbers, and demanded a return of the stolen money. The intervention by the Byzantine general Process prevented such further escalation. A few weeks later, on the 8th of September, Frederick and Wolf VI were among the few German crusaders spared when flash flooding destroyed the main camp. They had encamped on a hill away from the main army. The army reached Constantinople the following day. Now, Conrad III attempted to lead the army overland across Anatolia. Finding this too difficult in the face of constant Turkish attacks, he turned back. The rear guard was subsequently annihilated. Conrad sent Frederick ahead to inform King Louis VII of France of the disaster and ask for help. The two armies, French and German, then advanced together. When Conrad III fell ill at Christmas in Ephesus, he returned to Constantinople by ship with his main followers, including Frederick. With the Byzantine ships and money, the German army left Constantinople on the 7th of March, 1148, and arrived in Acre on the 11th of April. After Easter, Conrad and Frederick visited Jerusalem, where Frederick was impressed with the charitable works of the Knights Hospitalier. He took part in the council that was held at Palmyra on the 24th of June, where they decided to attack Damascus. Now, the siege of Damascus lasted a mere 5 days and ended in an ignominious defeat. Gilbert of Mons, writing 50 years later, recorded that Frederick prevailed in arms before all others in front of Damascus. On the 8th of September, the German army sailed out of Acre. Now, on the route home, Conrad III and Frederick stopped in Thessaloniki, where they swore oaths to uphold the treaty that Conrad had agreed with Emperor Manuel I Comneros the previous winter. The treaty obligated the Germans to attack King Roger II of Sicily in cooperation with the Byzantines. After confirming this treaty, Frederick went ahead to Germany. He passed through Bulgaria and Hungary on his trip home and arrived in April 1149. Now, when Conrad died in 1152, only Frederick and the Prince Bishop of Bamberg were at his deathbed. Both asserted afterwards that Conrad had, in full possession of his mental powers, handed the royal insignia to Frederick and indicated that Frederick, rather than Conrad's own 6-year-old son, the future Frederick IV, Duke of Swabia, succeed him as king.
Wow.
Yeah, Frederick energetically pursued the crown, and at Frankfurt on May 4th, 1152, the kingdom's princely electors designated him as the next German king. He was crowned the King of the Romans in Aachen several days later. Frederick's mother was from the Well family, and the father was from the Hohenstaufen family. They were two of the most powerful families in Germany. The Hohenzollerns were often called Ghibellines, which derives from the Italianized name for the Waibilgen castle, the family seat in Swabia. The Welfs, a similar Italianization, were called the Guelfs. Now, the reigns of Henry IV and Henry V left the status of the German Empire in disarray, its power waning under the weight of the recently settled controversy of the investiture. For a quarter of a century following the death of Henry V in 1125, the German monarchy was largely a nominal title with no real power. The king was chosen by the princes, given no resources outside of those of his own duchy, and it prevented them from exercising any real authority or leadership to the realm. Yeah, the royal title was furthermore passed from one family to another to preclude the development of any dynastic interest in the German crown. When Frederick was chosen as king in 1152, the royal power had been in effective abeyance for over 25 years, and to a considerable degree, more than 80 years. The only real claim to wealth lay in the rich cities of northern Italy, which were still within the nominal control of the German king. The Salian line had died out with the death of Henry V in 1125. The German princes refused to give the crown to his nephew, the Duke of Swabia, for fear he would try to regain the imperial power held by Henry V. Instead, they chose Lothar III, who found himself embroiled in a long-running dispute with the Hohenzollerns, who had married into the Welfs. One of the Hohenzollerns gained the throne as Conrad III of Germany, previously mentioned. When Frederick Barbarossa succeeded his uncle, there seemed to be an excellent prospect for ending the feud, since he was a Welf on his mother's side. The Welf Duke of Saxony, Henry the Lion, would not be appeased, however, remaining an implacable enemy of the Hohenstaufen monarchy. Barbarossa had the duchies of Swabia and Franconia, the force of his own personality, and very little else to construct an empire with. Now, one of the key things to look at here, the Germany that Frederick tried to unite, you think of the United States with 50 states. He was working with 1,600 individual states. They were all little clusters. Some of them were so small you couldn't even find them on a map. They ran different types of titles, everything from Caesar, Augustus, Emperor of the Romans. By the time Frederick would assume these, they were little more than a propaganda slogan with little other meaning. Frederick was a pragmatist who dealt with the princes by finding mutual self-interest. Unlike Henry II of England, Frederick did not attempt to end medieval feudalism, but rather tried to restore it though this was beyond his capability. The great players of the German Civil War had been the Pope, the Emperor, the Ghibellines, and the Guelphs, but none of these had emerged as the winner. Now, eager to restore the empire to the position it had occupied under Charlemagne and Otto I, or the Great, the new king saw clearly that restoration of order in Germany was a necessary preliminary to the enforcement of the imperial rights in Italy. Issuing a general order for peace, he made lavish concessions to the nobles. Abroad, Frederick intervened in the Danish Civil War between Sven III and Valdemar I of Denmark, and began negotiations with the Eastern Roman Emperor Manuel I Cormius. It was probably about this time that the king obtained papal assent for the annulment of the childless marriage with Aldehid of Valburg on the grounds of, pronouncing this is going to be fun, consanguinity. His great-great-great-grandfather was brother of Adelia's great-great-great-grandmother, making them fourth cousins once removed. He made he made a vain attempt to obtain a bride from the court of Constantinople. On his accession, Frederick had communicated the news of his election to the Pope Eugene III, but had neglected to ask for papal confirmation. In 1153, Frederick concluded the Treaty of Constance with the Pope, wherein he promised, in return for the coronation, to defend the papacy, to make no peace with King Roger II of Sicily, or other enemies of the Church without the consent of Eugene, and to help Eugene regain control of the city of Rome. Now, Frederick would undertake 6 different expeditions into Italy. The first, beginning in October of 1154, his plan was to launch a campaign against the Normans under King William I of Sicily. He marched down and almost immediately encountered resistance to his authority. Obtaining the submission of Milan, he successfully besieged Tortona in February 1155, razing it to the ground on April the 18th. He moved on to Pavia, where he, according to some historians, he received the Iron Crown and the title King of Italy, and in the Basilica of San Michele Maggiore. Other historians instead place his coronation took place in Monza on the 15th of April. Moving through Bologna and Tuscany, he soon approached the city of Rome. There, Pope Adrian IV was struggling with the forces of the Republican city commune, led by Arnold of Brescia, a student of Abelard. As a sign of good faith, Frederick dismissed the ambassadors from the revived Roman Senate, and imperial forces suppressed the Republicans. Arnold was captured and hanged for treason and rebellion. Despite his unorthodox teaching concerning theology, Arnold was not charged with heresy. As Frederick approached the gates of Rome, the Pope advanced to meet him. At the royal tent, the king received him, and after kissing the Pope's feet, Frederick expected to receive the traditional kiss of peace. Frederick had declined to hold the Pope's stirrup while leading him to the tent, however, so Adrian refused to give the kiss until this protocol had been complied with. Frederick hesitated, and Adrian IV withdrew. After a day's negotiation, Frederick agreed to perform the required ritual, reportedly muttering, "For Peter, not for Adrian." Rome was still in an uproar over the fate of Arnold of Brescia, so rather than marching through the streets of Rome, Frederick and Adrian retired to the Vatican. The next day, on the 18th of June, 1155, Adrian IV crowned Frederick I Holy Roman Emperor at St. Peter's Basilica amid the acclamations of the German army. The Romans began to riot, and Frederick spent his coronation day putting down the revolt, resulting in the death of over 1,000 Romans and many more thousands injured. The next day, Frederick, Adrian, and the German army traveled to Tivoli. From there, a combination of the unhealthy Italian summer and the effects of his year-long absence from Germany meant he was forced to put off his planned conquest against the Normans in Sicily. On their way back north, they attacked Spoleto and encountered the ambassadors Manuel's first commoneros, who showered Frederick with costly gifts. At Verona, Frederick declared his fury with the rebellious Milanese before finally returning to Germany. Back home, disorder was rampant again, especially in Bavaria, but general peace was restored by Frederick's vigorous but conciliatory measures. The Duchy of Bavaria was transferred from Henry II, Margrave of Austria, to Frederick's formidable younger cousin, Henry the Lion, Duke of Saxony, of the House of Guelph, whose father had previously held both duchies. Henry II was named Duke of Austria in compensation for his loss of Bavaria. As part of the general policy of concessions of former power to the German princes and ending the civil wars within the kingdom, Frederick further appeased Henry by issuing him with the Privilegium Minus, granting him unprecedented entitlements as the Duke of Austria. This was a large concession on part of Frederick, realizing that Henry the Lion had to be accommodated even to the point of sharing some power with him. Frederick could not afford to make an outright enemy of Henry. Now, in June of 1156 at Würzburg, Frederick married Beatrice of Burgundy, daughter and heiress of Renaud III, thus adding to his possessions the sizable realm of the county of Burgundy. In an attempt to create comedy, Emperor Frederick proclaimed that Peace of the Land, written between 1152 and 1157, which enacted punishments for a variety of crimes as well as systems for adjusting many disputes. He also declared himself the sole Augustus of the Roman world, ceasing to recognize Manuel I at Constantinople. Now, the retreat that Frederick had to do forced Pope Adrian IV to come to terms with King William of Sicily, granting William I territories that Frederick viewed as his dominion. This really frustrated Frederick, and he is further displeased when Papal legates chose to interpret a letter from Adrian to Frederick in a manner that seemed to imply that the imperial crown was a gift from the papacy, and that in fact the empire itself was a fief of the papacy. Disgusted with the Pope and still wishing to crush the Normans in the south of Italy, in June of 1158 Frederick set out upon his second Italian expedition, accompanied by Henry the Lion and his Saxon troops. This expedition resulted in a revolt and the capture of Milan. The Diet of Roncaglia saw the establishment of imperial officers and ecclesiastical reforms in the cities of northern Italy. At the beginning of the long struggle with Pope Alexander III, Milan soon rebelled again and humiliated Empress Beatrice. The death of Pope Adrian IV in 1159 led to the election of two rival popes, Alexander III and anti-pope Victor IV, and both sought Frederick's support. Frederick, busy with the siege of Crema, appeared unsupportive of Alexander III, and after the sacking of Crema, demanded that Alexander appear before the emperor at Pavia and accept the imperial decree. Alexander refused, and Frederick recognized Victor IV as the legitimate pope in 1160. In response, Alexander III excommunicated both Frederick I and Victor IV. Frederick attempted to convoke a joint council with King Louis VII of France in 1162 to decide the issue on who should be pope. Louis was nearing the meeting site, but when he became aware that Frederick had stacked the votes for Alexander, Louis decided not to attend the council. As a result, the issue was not resolved at that time. The political result of the struggle with Pope Alexander was an alliance formed between the Norman state of Sicily and Pope Alexander III against Frederick. In the meantime, Frederick had to deal with another rebellion at Milan, in which the city surrendered and much was destroyed in March of 1162. And this is done under the emperor's orders. The fate of Milan led to the submission of Brescia, Plancia, and many other northern Italy cities. In 1162, August, he triumphantly entered Turin and was crowned with his consort in the cathedral of August the 15th. Returning to Germany close to the end of 1162, Frederick prevented the escalation of conflicts between Henry the Lion from Saxony and the number of neighboring princes who were growing weary of Henry's power, influence, and territorial gains. He also severely punished the citizens of Mainz for their rebellion against the Archbishop Arnold. In Frederick's third visit to Italy in 1163, his plans for the conquest of Sicily were ruined by the formation of a powerful league against him, brought together mainly by the opposition to imperial taxes. Well, nobody likes taxes.
Taxes!
In 1164, Frederick took what he believed to be the relics of the biblical magi, the wise men or three kings, from the Basilica di Sant'Edurio in Milan and gave them as a gift or as loot to the Archbishop of Cologne, Renaud of Dusshol. The relics had great religious significance and could be counted upon to draw pilgrims from all over Christendom. Today, they are kept in the shrine of the Three Kings in the Cologne Cathedral, After the death of the anti-pope Victor IV, Frederick supported the anti-pope Paschal III, but he was soon driven from Rome, leading to the return of Pope Alexander III in 1165. In the meantime, Frederick was focused on restoring peace in the Rhineland, where he organized a magnificent celebration on the canonization of Charlemagne at Aachen under the authority of anti-pope Paschal III. Concerned over rumors that Alexander III was about to enter into an alliance with the Byzantine Emperor Manuel I on October 1166, Frederick embarked on his fourth Italian campaign, hoping as well to secure the claim of Paschal III and the coronation of his wife, Beatrice, as Holy Roman Empress. At this time, Henry the Lion refused to join Frederick on his Italian trip, tending instead to his own disputes with his neighbors and continuing expansion into Slavic territories in northeastern Germany. In 1167, Frederick began besieging Ancona, which had acknowledged the authority of Manuel I, and at the same time his force achieved a great victory over the Romans at the Battle of Monte Porzio. Heartened by this victory, Frederick lifted the siege of Ancona and hurried to Rome, where he had his wife crowned empress and also received a second coronation from Paschal. Unfortunately, his campaign was halted when a sudden outbreak of an epidemic, malaria, or the plague, which threatened to destroy the imperial army and drove the emperor as a fugitive back to Germany, where he remained for the next 6 years. During that period, Frederick decided conflicting claims to various bishop areas, asserted imperial authority over Bohemia, Poland, and Hungary, initiated friendly relations with Manuel I, and tried to come to a better understanding with Henry II of England and Louis VII of France. Many Swabian counts, including his cousin to the young Duke of Swabia, Frederick VII, died in 1167, so he was able to organize a new mighty territory in the Duchy of Swabia under the reign at this time. Consequently, his younger son, Frederick V, became the new Duke of Swabia in 1167, while his eldest son Henry was crowned King of the Romans in 1169, alongside his father, who also retained the title. That would get confusing after a while. Now, increasing anti-German sentiment swept through Lombardy, culminating with the restoration of Milan in 1169. In 1174, Frederick made his fifth expedition to Italy. Guy, just buy a house. You're going to be there a long time.
What?
And probably during this time, the famous Triglypherency, a record of royal estates, was made. He was opposed by the pro-papal Lombardy League, now joined by Venice, Sicily, and Constantinople, which had previously formed to stand against him. The cities of northern Italy had become exceedingly wealthy through trade, representing a marked turning point from the tradition from medieval feudalism. While continental feudalism had remained strong socially and economically, it was in deep political decline by the time of Frederick Barbarossa. When the northern Italian cities inflicted defeat on Frederick at Alessandria in 1175, the European world was shocked. With the refusal of Henry the Lion to bring help to Italy, the campaign was a complete failure. Frederick suffered a heavy defeat at the Battle of Lugano near Milan in May of 1176, where he was wounded for some time and was believed to be dead. The battle marked the turning point in Frederick's claim to empire. He had no choice then to begin negotiations for peace with Alexander III and the Lombard League. The Peace of Lugano in 1176, Frederick recognized Alexander III as Pope, and at the Peace of Venice in 1177, Frederick and Alexander III were formally reconciled. With the decision of Paschal III nullified, Beatrice ceased to be referred to as an empress. The scene was similar to what had occurred between Pope Gregory VII and Henry VI, the Holy Roman Emperor at Cassalonia a century earlier. The conflict was the same that was resolved with the Concordat at Worms. Did the Holy Roman Empire have the power to name the Pope and bishops? The investiture controversy from previous centuries had been brought to a tenderest peace with the Concordat of Worms and affirmed with the First Council of Lateran. Now it had recurred with a slightly different form. Frederick had to humble himself before Alexander III at Venice. The emperor acknowledged the pope's sovereignty over the papal states, and in return, Alexander acknowledged the emperor's overlordship of the imperial church. Also in the Peace of Venice, the truce was made with the Lombard cities, which took effect on August 1178. The grounds for a permanent peace were not established until 1183, however. In the Peace of Constance, which Frederick conceded was their right to freely elect town magistrates, by this move, Frederick recovered his nominal domination over Italy, which became his chief means of applying pressure on the papacy. In order to consolidate his reign after this disastrous expedition to Italy, Frederick was formally crowned King of Burgundy at Arles in 30 June of 1178. Although traditionally the German kings had automatically inherited the royal crowns of Arles by the time of Conrad II, Frederick felt the need to be crowned by the Archbishop of Arles, regardless of his land claim to the title from 1152. Now, Frederick did not forgive Henry the Lion for refusing to come to his aid in 1176, and by 1180 Henry had successfully established a powerful and contiguous state comprising Saxony, Bavaria, and substantial territories in the north and east of Germany. Taking advantage of the hostility over German princes to Henry, Frederick had Henry tried in absentia by a court of bishops and princes in 1180, declared that the imperial law overruled traditional German law, and that Henry be stripped of his lands and declared an outlaw. He then invaded Saxony with an imperial army to force his cousin to surrender. Henry's allies deserted him, and he finally had to submit to Frederick in Erfurt in November of 1181. Henry spent 3 years in exile at the court of his father-in-law, Henry II of England, in Normandy, before he was allowed back into Germany. He finished his days in Germany at the much diminished rank of Duke of Brunswick. Frederick's desire for revenge was sated. Henry the Lion lived a relatively quiet life afterwards, sponsoring arts and architecture. Frederick's victory over Henry did not gain him much in the German feudalistic system as he would have in the English feudalistic system. While in England the pledge of fealty went to direct line from overlords to those under him, the Germans' pledged oath only went to the direct overlord, so that in Henry's case, below those him in the feudal chain owed nothing to Frederick. Thus, despite the diminished stature of Henry the Lion, Frederick did not gain his allegiances.
Oh, man.
Frederick was also facing the reality of disorder among the German states, which continuous civil wars were waged between pretenders and the ambitious who wanted the crown for themselves. Italian unity under German rule was more myth than truth. Despite proclamations of the German hegemony, the Pope was the most powerful force in Italy. While Frederick returned to Germany after his defeat in northern Italy, he was a bitter and exhausted man. The German princes, far from being subordinated to his royal control, were intensifying their hold on wealth and power in Germany and entrenching their positions. There began to be a generalized social desire to create a greater Germany by conquering the Slavs to the east. Although the Italian city-states had achieved a measure of independence from Frederick as a result of his failed fifth expedition into Italy, the emperor had not given up on his Italian dominions. In 1184, he held a massive celebration, the Diet of Pentecost, where 2 of his eldest sons were knighted, and thousands of knights were invited from all over Germany. While payments upon the knighting of a son were part of the expectations of an overlord in England and France, only a gift was given in Germany for such an occasion. Frederick's monetary gain from the celebration was said to have been a modest one. Later in 1184, Frederick again moved into Italy, this time joining forces with local rural nobility to reduce the power of the Tuscan cities. In 1186, he engineered the marriage of his son Henry to Constance of Sicily, heiress to the Kingdom of Sicily, over the objections of Pope Urban III. Pope Urban III died shortly thereafter and was succeeded by Pope Gregory VIII, who even as papal chancellor had pursued more conciliatory tones with the emperor than previous popes and had more concernment with the troubling reports from the Holy Land than with the power struggle with Barbarossa. Now, around 1187, Frederick received letters that had been sent to him from the rulers of the Crusader states in the Near East, urging him to come to their aid. Around the 1st of December, Cardinal Henry of Marcy preached a crusade sermon before Frederick in the public assembly at Strasbourg. Frederick expressed support for the crusade, but declined to take the cross on the grounds of his ongoing conflict with the Archbishop Philip of Cologne. He did, however, urge King Philip II of France to take the cross through messengers, and then a personal meeting on the 25th of December on the border between Envoy and Moudon. On the 27th of March in 1188, at the Diet of Mainz, the Archbishop of Cologne submitted to Frederick, Bishop of Würzburg, Godfrey of Spitzenberg, preached a crusade sermon, and Frederick asked the assembly whether he should take the cross. At the universal acclaim of the assembly, he took the crusader's vow. His second son, the Duke of Swabia, followed suit. The eldest, Henry VI, was to remain behind in Germany as regent. At Mainz, Frederick proclaimed a general expedition against the pagans. He set the period of preparation as the 17th of April, 1188 to 8th of April, 1189, and scheduled the army to assemble at Regensburg on the 23rd of April, 1189. At Strasbourg, Frederick had imposed a small tax on the Jews of Germany to fund the crusade. He also put the Jews under his protection and forbade anyone to preach against the Jews. When mobs threatened the Jews of Mainz on the eve of the assembly, Frederick sent an imperial marshal, Henry of Caden, to disperse them. Rabbi Moses then met with the emperor and resulted in an imperial edict threatening maiming or death for anyone who maimed or killed a Jew. On the 29th of March, Frederick and the rabbi rode through the streets together. Frederick successfully prevented a repeat of the massacres that had accompanied the First Crusade and the Second Crusade in Germany. Now, because Frederick had signed a treaty of friendship with Saladin in 1175, he felt it necessary to give Saladin notice of the termination of their alliance. On the 26th of May, 1188, he sent Count Henry II of Dietz to present an ultimatum to Saladin. A few days after Christmas of 1188, Frederick received Hungarian, Byzantine, Serbian, and Seljuk envoys in Nuremberg. The Hungarians and Seljuks promised provisions and safe conduct to the Crusaders. The envoys of Stefan de Maria, Grand Prince of Serbia, announced that their prince would receive Frederick and Nice. Only with difficulty was an agreement reached with the Byzantine envoy, John Catamaros. Frederick sent a large embassy ahead to make preparations in Byzantium. On the 15th of April, 1189, in Hagenau, Frederick formally and symbolically accepted the staff and script of a pilgrim and set out. His crusade was the most meticulously planned and organized up to that time. According to one source written in the 1220s, Frederick organized a grand army of 100,000 men, including 20,000 knights, and set out in an overland route to the Holy Land. This number is believed to be inaccurate. Modern estimates using contemporary sources place the size of the army around 12,000 to 15,000 men, including 3,000 to 4,000 knights.
Still a lot of people.
Yeah, for back then. The Crusades passed through Hungary, Serbia, and Bulgaria before entering the Byzantine territory. Matters were complicated due to a secret alliance between the Emperor of Constantinople, Isaac II Angelos, and Saladin, warning of which was supplied by a note from Sibylla, the ex-queen of Jerusalem. While in Hungary, Barbarossa personally asked the Hungarian Prince Giza, brother of King Bela III of Hungary, to join the crusade. The king agreed, and a Hungarian army of 2,000 men, led by Giza, escorted the German emperor's forces. Later, Frederick camped at Philippolis, and then in Adrianople in the autumn of 1189 to avoid the winter climate in Anatolia, and in the meantime he received the imprisoned German emissaries who were held in Constantinople and exchanged hostages with Isaac II as a guarantee that the Crusaders do not sack local settlements until they depart Byzantine territory. In March 1190, Frederick left Adrianople to Gallipoli in the Dardanelles to embark to Asia Minor. The armies were coming from the Western Empire, from Western Europe, pushed on through Anatolia, where they were victorious at the Battle of Philolium and defeated the Turks in the Battle of Iconium, eventually reaching as far as the Sicilian Armenia. As the approach of Barbarossa's victorious German army greatly concerned Saladin, who was forced to weaken his force at the siege of Acre and send troops to the north to block the arrival. Barbarossa opted to, on the local Armenians' advice, to follow a shortcut along the Self River. Meanwhile, the army started to traverse the mountain path. On the 10th of June, 1190, he drowned at this near Selfurt Castle in the Self River. There are several conflicting accounts of the event. According to Ansbert, against everyone's advice, the emperor chose to swim across the river and was swept away by the current. Another account that Frederick was thrown from his horse while crossing the river, weighed down by his armor, and drowned. And according to the chronicler Il Ibn Athir, the king went down to the river to wash himself and was drowned in a place where the water was not even up to his waist. Thus God saved us from the evil of such a man. Thanks. The writer of the...
I don't think he liked him.
No, not much. The writer of the letter on the death of the Emperor Frederick, a churchman who accompanied the Crusader forces, reported that after many and terrible exertions that Frederick I had undergone in the previous month and more, he decided the need to bathe in that same river, for he wanted to cool down with a swim. But by the secret judgment of God, there was an unexpected and lamentable death, and he drowned. Frederick, who liked to swim, as he went to battle with Otto of Wurzbach in the Adriatic, might have been exhausted from the weeks of marchings, hence he was fatally affected with the very hot summer in Anatolia. If the writer was Godfrey of Spitzberg, Bishop of Würzburg, who was close confidant of Frederick, the report might have been the most plausible account of what happened, and he might have witnessed the emperor's death. Jacques de Vitry, a historian of the Crusades, outlined Frederick's endeavors in Saladin's dilemma, in which he reported, while there were varied fortunes of the first of the field, Frederick, the Roman Emperor, set out on his journey by land with great power and countless hosts of warriors. Passing over the borders of Germany, he crossed Hungary, Macedonia, and Greece, and marched through the lands of Saracens with a mighty hand and outstretched arm. He took Ionicum, Filomena, and many other cities, and reached Armenia, where, during the great heat, he went into the river, which the natives called the Iron River, to bathe, and therein for our sins was miserably drowned, and so died to the loss of all Christendom. Saladin was so greatly feared, Saladin so greatly feared his approach that he ordered the walls of Leucdokia, Giblet, Tortosa, Biblium, and Beirut to be pulled down, sparing only the fortresses, that is, the citadels and towers. Now, Frederick's death caused several thousand German soldiers to leave the force and return home through Syrian ports.
Well, he's dead. Let's go home.
Yeah, we're done. We're done partying, kids. Bye. The German-Hungarian army was struck with an onset of disease near Antioch, weakening it further. Only 5,000 soldiers, a third of the original force, arrived in Acre. Barbarossa's son, the Frederick VI of Swabia, carried on with the remnants of the German army, along with the Hungarian army under command of Prince Giza, with the aim of burying the emperor in Jerusalem, but the efforts to preserve his body in vinegar failed. Hence his flesh was interred to the church of St. Peter in Antioch, his bones to the cathedral of Tyre, and his heart and inner organs at the St. Paul's Church. Have a heart.
Yeah.
The unexpected demise, Frederick left the Crusader army under the command of the rivals Philip II and Richard, who had traveled to Palestine separately by sea, and ultimately led to the dissolution. Richard continued to the east, where he fought Saladin, winning territories along the shores of Palestine, but ultimately failed to win the war by conquering Jerusalem itself before he was forced to return to his own territories in northwestern Europe, known as the Angevin Empire. He returned home after he signed a Treaty of Ramla, agreeing that Jerusalem would remain under Muslim control while allowing unarmed Christian pilgrims and traders to visit the city. The treaty also reduced the Latin kingdom to a geopolitical coastal strip extending from Tyre to Jaffa. But basically, here was a guy that at the height of his standing, he had a total of 5 different crowns. And in the end, he failed at his last objective, which was to take part in one of the Crusades. He did take part in the earlier crusade, but he died on the way to the last one. So, but little history tidbit for you folks. I'm Joe the Bearded Historian with Sue from the Bud Files. You folks have a good day. Bye.